off, thank you so much for joining today. We have Adam Dix, who from Anthropic and head of operations there. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself here momentarily, but just a few quick housekeeping items. We do want to keep this interactive, however, because we have so much to get through, please feel free to put any questions you may have for Adam or myself in the chat, and we will save some time at the end to get to those. So, but please put them in as we go along. That will also help us kind of gauge how much time to leave at the end as well. We do have the hour together, so hopefully you can join us and stay for the entire thing. For those who don't know me, my name is Em Daigle. I am the founder and Chief Automation Officer of OTTO-MATES. We are a community of accounting and finance professionals where we focus entirely on all things AI and automation. So it's an opportunity to kind of come together and collaborate with others in the space around what works, what doesn't, what are you trying, particularly relevant for all the things we have going on. And that's why and how I met Adam. Adam is a member of OTTO-MATES as well and has extensive experience, especially in the AI space. So Adam, would love if you can intro yourself and then we can kind of jump into it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Em, and appreciate the invite to join you today. I'm Adam. I'm the head of finance operations at Anthropic, where I lead our procurement, accounts payable, employee travel expense, and payroll teams. Joined Anthropic 2 years ago. Next week will be my 2-year anniversary. Before Anthropic, started my career in audit at Ernst & Young, spent a decade at Netflix from 2011 to 2021. Right around when I hit my 10-year mark, we had twins right before the pandemic, so I decided to take a year off to help with our young kids and moved our family from the Bay Area down to San Diego. Then I was most recently in a finance transformation role at Roku before joining Anthropic.
Great. So lots of relevant experience, love it, and lots of great stuff to share. I've had the pleasure of kind of seeing already what Adam's going to walk us through, so you're all in for a treat. There's a number of different things we're going to go through, but before we get into it too much, Adam, would love, I know everybody kind of definitely aware of, knows about Anthropic, but maybe would you mind sharing just kind of like a brief overview on Anthropic and maybe just kind of at a high level walk us through the agenda and what we're going to walk through today?
Yeah, sounds good. So Anthropic is an AI research company that develops and deploys large language models like Claude, which powers a lot of the AI and software products you see today. But Anthropic isn't just another AI company. It's very mission focused, and we're on a mission to ensure the world safely makes the transition through this transformative AI technology. I think a few things make Anthropic unique. One is they started as a research-only lab where they developed novel methods like constitutional AI that helps us ensure Claude is inherently truthful and transparent by giving a set of values aligned with human values. Second is we're structured as a public benefit corporation, and we have a long-term benefit trust that oversees our board and has no financial interest in the company. And their role is to make sure Anthropic stays true to our mission. And it allows us to have our mission take priority if it's ever in conflict with shareholder interests. And the last is related to our responsible scaling policy, where we tie our model deployments to safety considerations. We define what that next level is, and before we release a new model, we'll make sure all of those safety considerations are reached. And we have and will continue to delay models until we are fully confident on the safety considerations. In terms of today, let me show you change the screen. We'll show a couple of product demos of Claude in action to show the art of the possible of what Claude can do. And then I'll talk about how we're actually using Claude today in finance operations at Anthropic. I'll give a high-level prioritization framework for how we got started and how others could get started if you're thinking about it. And then I'll share a vision I have for the future of finance operations with AI.
I love that. That one's particularly of interest to me. And I do love some of those preceded demos that you have kind of prepped up, Adam, because I think they do help with, especially with folks who aren't intimately familiar yet with Claude, and overall Anthropic. So that's probably a great place to start. Do you want to just kind of like walk us through those?
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. This first video is really looking at how Claude can use context provided, but also go in and use web search to gather more context. So right now, the user is giving Claude context. Claude's reviewing the context and then going to go out to the web to find more context. Now Claude's using what's called a virtual machine to actually go and create outputs for the user. You can see it's a Google Sheet or Excel file. It actually has formulas inside of the file, so doing everything that a human would have done. And then a Google Doc or Word doc.
I wish
And
I
it's
could
running
do
code
this.
in the background and creating a slide deck as well.
We'd all be millionaires if we could move this quickly, right? Awesome.
Let's see, this next one is showing our Chrome extension. So we now have an extension where you can add Claude on top of any Chrome browser and essentially give Claude access to your computer and let it take action and do tasks on your behalf on that browser. So it's going to ask for permission. Claude won't do anything on your behalf unless you explicitly give it permission to do so.
So cool. Assume you use this all the time, Adam. You probably have this so deeply embedded in everything you do.
This is really exciting. I found out about this through one of our product Slack channels. It's very hard to just keep up with all of the features that are happening. And I was like, wait a minute, this is huge. So I invited the PM team to one of my team meetings, and I actually had Claude come up with a list of a bunch of ways we could use the Chrome extension in FinOps, and we shared that list with the PM team. And now we're going to pair with some of them to actually go implement some of these, which is really exciting.
That's very cool. Very, very cool.
And this last one, let me turn it down a little bit. One of the things we announced recently as part of our financial services launch was a extension for Claude in Excel and Google Sheets. So you can actually open up a Claude chat window inside of Excel or Google Sheets, give it like natural language prompts, and let it do things on your behalf inside of that sheet or Excel. You saw I was reading a skill. I'll talk about skills a little bit, but I think skills are a really great way to accelerate Claude's context knowledge so that it can reperform tasks with a bundled set of instructions already.
And I've had the benefit of having these slides. I can't tell you how many times I've like watched these these demos through on my own. So I'm sure everybody else is going to enjoy being able to do something similar, but it just gets my mind like spinning on all the things that I should be using it for.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You can have Claude create an Excel or Google Sheet file for you. And then you can open up the extension to have Claude go edit or do tasks inside that sheet. and then link that sheet back to Claude and have Claude prepare a memo or slide deck or email related to it, which is pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's like these are these agents, and for anybody who's attended any, I'll say recent webinars or talks that I've been doing, but I think of like these AI agents literally being like a first year that you hire on, doesn't have like the attitude maybe that a first year might have. No shade to any potential first years listening in. But sometimes, like humans think they have like a better way to do it. And it's really interesting though, because you're basically instructing and teaching an agent, which is like a first year, to be able to do these things, and then it gets more and more comfortable with it. And but it's really wild. It's very cool to see like a piece of technology able to do these things. Okay, so given even just that you said like bringing in your product team and how you guys can use it in finance operations, you've shown me some bits and pieces of like what you and your team have pulled together, but super excited for everybody else to kind of see what you have built internally, what you're using, and that sort of thing. So would love to get into it now that we've kind of like seen how it works at a high level. And again, for anybody who has questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll address them here at the end.
Yeah, so I actually didn't use any Gen AI tools before I joined Anthropic, but I wanted to get familiar with our product and lean into it. The more I use Claude, the more and better ways I found to use Claude. And I've really tried to kind of help instill a mindset shift on our team, because I think finance operations has so much opportunity for efficiency with AI. So just that mindset shift of starting with Claude, trying to get them used to anything. Anytime you have to do anything, think about how Claude could have done that for you, or at least help you do it more efficiently or faster. And so I'm really excited about where Claude is today, and the models and features are accelerating at a rapid pace. So I'm super excited about what the future holds. For a little context on some scale, so I mentioned I've been at Anthropic for 2 years. When I joined, we were around 250 employees, and our finance team was a team of 5. It was also the first year we launched our product, and we ended our first year of revenue around 100 million ARR. Fast forward to today, we've more than 10x our employee count. We're over 2,000 employees now. We've had to build out an entire finance function. I think it changes by the week, but I think we're over 80 now, all of finance. And we've seen remarkable, like unprecedented growth in revenue, going 10x from 100 million ARR to a billion last year, to Daria reporting that we were over 7 billion just last month. I think what's remarkable is we've managed to support that unprecedented growth with a very lean team in FinOps, which is typically very much drowns as the volume grows. And I think one of the ways we've been able to survive and do that has been by leaning into Claude. When talking about how we use Claude internally, I found it helpful to bucket it into 4 different ways. The first is Claude as a consultant. One of the first things I did when I joined was I created a Claude project and essentially gave Claude the persona of my role. So like, hey, Claude, you're in charge of FinOps at Anthropic. Here's a bunch of context related to people, process, and systems. And now I use this consultant daily for strategic advice or complex problem solving, or even to bounce my ideas off of. I even used it to help me prepare slides and content for this session. And we've also given employees a way to turn a project like this into your chief of staff, where it really pulls a lot of context on you and your team. And the more you use that project, the more context it has. The next area is Claude as a teammate. So this is where Claude is creating outputs on our behalf. And we've seen a ton of efficiency gains here across the team. Things like creating process documentation based on a transcript of a walkthrough meeting, or policy docs and FAQs and how-to guides for our employee base. I mentioned how small our company was when I joined. So we didn't have any finance policies when I joined. And one of the first things I did as well was create our first version of a procurement policy and a T&E policy for the company. So I used Claude to create that draft for me. I asked it to use web search to go research other what it should be doing and use the context that it had to create a policy. And it was okay. Like I had to iterate on that and improve it. But I think what was really amazing is midway through the year last year, I uploaded all of the questions we were getting in our finance tickets channel and asked Claude to identify themes of where we could improve the policy and add more clarity. And this gets into the next area of Claude as an analyst, where Claude is actually performing analytical work on our behalf. One example here is, I mentioned we have a very lean team in FinOps. I have one person on my team who manages all things employee travel and expense, plus does a ton of other stuff for us. And I don't want her spending a bunch of time reviewing all of our employee expense transactions. So what we did is we created a Claude project. We used Brex for employee expenses, and we exported all of the raw transaction details, uploaded into this Claude project, gave Claude our T&E policy, gave it instructions for what we would be looking at month end, and highlighting where to focus in terms of where are the risks of duplicates or out of policy, so that we can narrow down the 10,000 plus transactions to the top 10 or so that we should be reviewing. And this helped us save maybe what would have taken 10 or 12 hours as part of a close process to be 1 or 2 hours. And we demoed this to our Brex CSM team for how we were using Claude outside of Brex, and talked about how great it would be if we could just do this directly in the system. And they were inspired and recently announced a new product that they launched to be AI native and include Claude agents inside of Brex. So this was a really cool moment where they heard how we were using Claude, just decided to build it into their system, use Claude Code to do all of the engineering and coding for it. I think 80% of the code base was actually written by Claude. Worked with Melissa on my team, who leads this area, for weekly design sessions to help actually build what we wanted the agents to do. And now we get to use it as a Brex customer, which is a cool full circle moment.
That is really cool, Adam. I didn't realize that that's the, like, how that all kind of like came to be. Knowing what I know about the Brex side and what they have to offer, I didn't, that's actually a really cool story that like is really one of those like by account or for accountants by accountants, but legitimately not even like in company, just being able to like help each other out with that. Very, very cool.
Totally. And that gets into this last area of Claude as an agent. And this is where I think, to your point, things get really exciting for how we can leverage Claude to automate work. I mentioned and demoed that Chrome extension and how we were meeting with the product team to talk through ways we could use this in FinOps. And I think this is a great use case when there aren't already agents inside of a given software system, because you could open it in a Chrome browser and add Claude on top to help. One example that I'm really excited about that we're working on is trying to automate our AP inbox. For those of you familiar with accounts payable, you know it's a very high volume function. So we get a ton of emails and invoices into our AP inbox. We have some automation rules to help categorize the email, whether it's an internal inquiry or external, or some like keywords to flag if it's payment related or vendor related, or and we have a rule to identify invoices if there's a PDF attachment and forward it to our P2P system. But not all attachments have an invoice, so we're troubleshooting in 2 systems, and it takes a lot of manual effort to manage this inbox. So what we're working on is adding a prompt for Claude inside of this AP inbox management system. And with the Chrome extension, you can have it in one window, but you can also open up other tabs as context tabs. So we can have Claude running in the background, reviewing our AP inbox, but also have a desktop procedures tab that it can reference for like, what is the team actually doing? How is it deciding whether it's a invoice or inquiry or what type of inquiry? Edge cases examples, responsive examples, and then have Claude actually go categorize things correctly for us, draft emails to the vendors that our team can go review. And I think once we get really comfortable letting Claude just manage the inbox and respond to vendors. So I think that's an opportunity to save a ton of time.
Very cool. Before you get in, one quick thing that I would love to note about this, Adam, is like I hear about everybody being very concerned about AI taking over jobs. Now, I love that you guys at Anthropic grew so in such a lean way, right? Like that's an incredible, if you look at how you grew exponentially, but only added so many folks. But that being said, you still need people. And so I think it's a really critical note that we still need humans in the loop. Just all of those very manual, tedious tasks can now go and be handled by things like Claude and other AI tools. But like, I think it's really important to note that even your team, like, it does still have to grow. It doesn't mean you're just going to like wipe out all accountants and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, 100%. And we're growing a ton. I think where Claude is helping is allowing us to do more with less, but we're still growing very, very fast. Like for context, at the start of this year, my FinOps team was a team of 4. We're now 12. I think we'll be 16 or so by the end of this year, hopefully, and then doubling next year, roughly. So we're still growing very fast. But I think what I would like to see is we're growing at a slightly slower pace than the company because we're getting more efficiencies as a result.
yep, exactly.
Um, and then I'll do a deeper dive into a couple of different examples. On the consultant piece, as we are getting bigger and getting larger amounts of funding, we want to, even though we're a private company, we want to operate as an excellent public company in terms of the processes and controls that we have. So that meant for us like building first in kind SOX documentation across our functions. From prior experience, I know this can take a lot of time and a lot of money working with consultants to help with this. So I wanted to try something different. And since Claude has a lot of context already, and we have what's called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, where we can connect Claude directly to our Google Drive, to our Asana, where we manage projects and workflows, and a bunch of other systems. I wanted to see if Claude could actually prepare SOX documentation for me. So I started with our procure to pay process, and I gave Claude specific links to our Drive folder for P2P, the Asana projects that we use, our policy and our internal knowledge base. I asked it to use web search to go identify like what this means for a SOX process and to identify best practice examples. And then I asked it to use the virtual machine that we demoed earlier to create 3 outputs for me. The first as a Google Doc being an end-to-end process narrative. The second as a Google Sheet with a detailed risk and control matrix. And the last as a Claude artifact as an interactive dashboard for a flowchart so I can see end-to-end flowcharting. This prompt wasn't perfect immediately. It actually took me some time and feedback to Claude to get to the right prompt. But one thing I did at the end of that chat session was I asked Claude, and I'll pull up this Google Doc that Claude created for me. I asked Claude to create a one-shot prompt for me for how I could then take this idea and apply it to my other functions for travel expense and payroll. And it did it perfectly with that one-shot prompt. So I also shared this with our other accounting leads so they could do it with their section and shared what did I actually use to start like giving all the links and then what is the one-shot prompt and all of the outputs that Claude created for us. Oops. Maybe since I had this open, I showed a bunch of, I talked through one example and I'll go deeper, and when you and I were chatting about brainstorming for this, I asked Claude to create a dashboard because I also have a Claude project of just all of the Claudification efforts we're doing inside of FinOps. And I asked Claude to create a dashboard during our session. It didn't finish it during the session. I ended up needing to use Claude code to get the exact output I wanted because it was dashboards inside of dashboards and very complex with all of the links and whatnot. But this is a cool artifact we have now where it's looking at all of the ways our team is using Claude, and I can drill into the type or the status or the pillar and click on particular examples. So like with the SOX documentation, I can actually see the Claude project that I created for this, the use case Google Sheet doc or Google Doc that I just showed, and the flowchart. So going back to here, this is a screenshot of what that flowchart looks like, but I'll actually show you what it looks like in Claude as well. So instead of creating like a manual flowchart diagram using Lucidchart or something else, I wanted Claude to do this for me. And so I asked it for P2P to go section by section. So vendor admin, procurement, invoicing, and payments. But I think what's really great is in addition to flowcharting it out, I actually can see context on like the controls that Claude identified as part of the risk control matrix. And I can click on any of these processes to see more details about what the actual steps being performed are. And it's also because it's inside of a Claude project, processes change frequently. And instead of having to go back and recreate these flowcharts, I can just link the updated doc to Claude and ask it to refresh the flowchart. One thing we're doing right now just to finalize this documentation is we had a P2P team meeting earlier this week, actually, and the goal was to do a test transaction end to end so everyone can have the benefit of seeing how this process actually works. And now we're using that transcript to have Claude refresh and finalize these documentations for us. So in terms of the output it created, also linked here, but it created this end-to-end Google Doc process narrative. Oh, it's slowly opening with my internet. And it created a detailed risk control matrix as well as a Google Sheet, so that we can see, for those who have experience with SOX documentation, like everything you would need here, what type of control it is, what the frequency is, what the status is, et cetera. So really great starting point for us to save a ton of time. So I think like impact wise, I'd say my experience is probably a couple months per function to create and finalize these, and hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in consulting fees that we were able to accomplish in under an hour for all of our functions.
So crazy. This is very, very cool to see in, I say real time. I know like it did take some time and some learning, but I think even just seeing this is super helpful because I think a lot of folks who are in this space, like we all have full-time jobs, right? Like it's difficult to spend time thinking about this, but when you can see the actual output and it makes that time that you're going to put into putting these, whether it's a project or whatever it might be, right? Like GPT or anything like that, but being able to do that and understand like there is true output value that that time spent will be a huge ROI for you.
Totally. And the next deep dive for thinking about teammate, and this is where I'll talk about a skill and what the skill means. But as our team is growing, we were having weekly leadership meetings and doing around the rooms for team health. And there was so much happening that this topic was taking up the whole time, and we didn't have time for strategic topics. So I wanted to see if we could do this async and see if we could have Claude help us. So we use Slack. It started with just a Slack weekly automation of like, hey, weekly team health update, like use this traffic light check-in, something green that's going well, something yellow that you're cautious about, and something red that you're blocked on. And the first time I did this with my team, got a lot of great feedback about just that visibility across the team and people realizing others are going through these challenges as well. And it actually gave me like a clear insight seeing everyone was blocked on time. So I added a contractor, someone who can like plug and play in each of the different pillars to help where teams are more burdened than others at given times. So that was like a real insight and action that I had from that first time. And I got good adoption at first. Everyone was going into Slack and putting in their updates, and then I would consolidate it with Claude and send it upwards. But then as employees are getting busier and busier, we're getting a little bit less adoption. So I was like, okay, maybe I can have Claude do this for them. And we had a recent company meeting where we talked about skills. And the person discussing skills talked about one of their favorite skills is Claude's ability to create a skill. So that night I went and asked Claude prepared this, but I asked Claude, like, what is a skill? So let's see. It's basically it's a way to package a bunch of information. So things that you would give it in a project where it learn over time, and you can upload a bunch of context. It gives it a bunch of prepackaged context and information and instructions. So for example, like a skill to always prepare slide decks in Anthropic brand colors and font. And so I asked Claude to look through all of our chats and find a bunch of skills for me, and it came up with a bunch of ideas. I said, all right, let's start with this weekly FinOps health check skill. And then I just asked Claude to go create the skill for me. And I didn't have to do anything. I just created the skill. I asked, okay, how do I actually enable this skill? How do I share it with my team? And it walked me through step by step how to do this. And now me and my team can just ask Claude any questions similar to the skill, and Claude will go and create an individual output that they can copy and paste into Slack, and then also a team-wide output by using MCP, look through everyone's individual email, calendar, plus team-related Slack channels, Drive folders, Asana, et cetera, to get all that context of what's going on.
That is a huge time savings. This one I'm looking into currently because I have a bunch of that exact issue. I'm sure we all do. Actually, I'm sure everybody's like feverishly taking notes on that one because imagine the time you could save there.
Totally. Yeah, it frees you up for more strategic work.
Yep.
This next one is something I'm really excited about and something we've been working on for a while. We actually started this at a hack week about a year ago in terms of kicking off how we can do this. But for context, I mentioned we had our first procurement policy last year. So we also had our first P2P metrics. So I created a framework for what metrics we wanted to track and why, and like how we can get employees from spending on corporate cards to actually follow a PO and procure to pay process. And we ended up with a really amazing output, but the team was spending a lot of time putting together the Google Sheet analysis and Google Slides. And so I think it was taking us 10 plus hours a month to prepare this. And so we wanted to have Claude automate this for us because I also thought there's a lot of other opportunity if we could actually do this. So it started with us creating a Claude project and uploading previous months of actual slide decks that we were creating and Google Sheet files that we were creating. We trained Claude over time to understand when a metric going up is good and should be green or is bad and should be red. And we gave it feedback on like that feedback loop on the commentary of what it should be doing. And now we're at the point where it's fully automated, where all we're doing is downloading raw data from Zip, which we use for procure to pay, uploading it into a Claude project, and Claude's creating a real-time dashboard that has insights, analysis, and all of the commentary that we were doing manually. So this is the screenshot, but I'll actually show you what it looks like as well. Last night I was in our P2P metrics Claude project because I wanted to make sure I wasn't sharing anything I shouldn't be sharing. I asked Claude to take the October metric dashboard that we reviewed recently and scrub it for a demo for this purpose. And it did so very quickly, which I was impressed by. So, and it even says demo version for me, so I know this isn't live. But this is a lot of like the actual metrics we look at, just not the vendors and dollars related to it. So it gives me like, as a leader, key insights that I can review, giving me key trends and metrics by process area. It's also interactive, so I could give it instructions, like say I wanted to break this down by entity or vendor or whatever else, being able to drill into that. And one thing I thought was cool was right now we're refreshing our policy for next year. And I wanted Claude to do an analysis of our current policy as volumes have grown and actually recommend a new policy for us for approval thresholds, which Claude did, and then also gave us what the insights and savings would be related to that.
It's so cool. This one, I was like, I even said, well, we were just joining beforehand, and Adam showed me what he scrubbed. I was like, you even have to call out that this is what you did last night because it's really, I feel like, Adam, just since we've been starting to talk about even just doing this webinar, the things that either you and your team have figured out or the things that have already changed and in such a short time is incredible. Like the innovation piece of it is just moving at such a quick pace. But I think, again, like seeing the actual output is compelling to everybody to like put in the time to do it because it's not just lost time playing around. Like there really is a true benefit to this. And even though you noted like the 10 hours time savings per month, I'm also going to take the like extra, you're taking this export, you're not having to then consolidate information. You're not then having to make sure that that reconciles somewhere. Like you're pulling it all together and the system is doing that for you, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're right. In addition to the time savings, we're getting better insights and analysis than we otherwise would have. And it kind of levels everyone up. So now instead of the Melissa again, who is doing this for us, having to spend the work doing it, she's reviewing it. And so she's doing it with less time, but also being able to add that extra layer of review to get more insights and analysis related to it.
Yep. And the oversight, which is key.
And the oversight.
Feel comfortable.
Yes, definitely need the human in the loop.
Confidence. Yeah, exactly.
And with this, like I mentioned, this is kind of a stepping stone, but now that we've proven this out, the next thing that we're working on right now is our team also owns the accruals and OpEx flux analysis at month end close. And we're working on automating that There's a lot of slides we put together as part of our monthly close package related to this. And we're working on having Claude automate that. And we actually just did this in parallel for October close in Claude's version using Claude Code tied out to the penny of what we were doing manually. Now we're creating a skill to have Claude have financial insights so that Claude can leverage this skill and review all of these transaction level details and do a flux analysis similar to what our team could do. And I think if we can do that, there's a potential to automate the legacy close package to be a dashboard.
Cool. Cool.
This last area for an agent is related to tickets. I mentioned how much scale we've seen in the last 2 years. This has been a big time suck for our team. Most of the finance tickets, so we have a process where employees go to a finance ticket Slack channel and ask questions, and it's connected to Jira for actual ticketing. Most of the tickets we get in finance are related to finance operations, people wondering like about their travel and expense policy or how to get vendors paid. And it was a big time suck, and we were having to say the same thing over and over again. So we have Claude in Slack. We used MCP again to connect a Claude agent in Slack to our internal knowledge base where we have policies and process docs and FAQs. And we created this Claude agent to respond to finance tickets on our behalf now. So now instead of waiting for one of our team members to get back to employees, Claude responds instantly. And it cites the specific page with the policy or process doc for the employee to go learn more if they want. And they still have the ability to raise a ticket if they want to talk to one of us. But we've seen that this has automated more than 80% of our tickets already. And we just launched it a little over a month ago. And for context on impact, this last Q3 for us ending September, we had over 1,000 finance tickets that the team resolved. And the year before it was under 300. So we're seeing that more than 3x growth. And now we've automated most of that, which is very exciting. There's an example I asked in that tickets channel of just asking Claude, how do I create a PO? And Claude, you see that Claude responded immediately, gave me step-by-step instructions for how to do this, reference important callouts, gave me key documents in terms of like our how-to guide and our policy to drill further.
It's even better than if you wrote to someone. And if you think about it, the person who might have been fielding that may have been like, oh my gosh, I got 1,000 things going on. They probably just would have responded with, and this is not a knock on your team specifically, but just anybody in the middle of things. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's not that hard. Just go here. You got to put in a new request and do some stuff. This is so much more information. And then on top of it, it saves time for the person who would have responded, but also saves time for the person who asked the question. Like all around, it really does sort of spider out from just like the initial time savings, because maybe they would have come back with other questions and then you've got to handle it again. Like it's literally like an FAQ live type of response, which is awesome.
Totally. Yeah, our employees are getting time back because they're getting real-time insights, and we can make sure it's consistent and accurate. And then our team's getting time back by not having to field these questions.
Yep, spot on.
Cool. So some cool examples that we're working on. I think honestly, we're just scratching the surface, and there's a lot more that I want to do with Claude in FinOps at Anthropic. I've heard this question a lot of like, how do I get started, or where did you start? What I've learned with Claude is it's very low learning curve. Like you could just ask Claude, where should I start? How do I do this? I've done that frequently. Just Claude, walk me through this like a kindergartner. Like I've never done this before, and it has, and it makes it so easy. Like having never coded before, being able to now code through Claude Code with Claude walking me through how to do it. But in terms of a framework, how we started in FinOps, at least, there's a lot of volume-based work. And so we thought about like using the Pareto 80-20 principle to try to identify the 20% of work that's taking roughly 80% of time, and start there where it's this time-intensive work, and see if we can have Claude automate or augment some of that work for us. I think as we get this time back, we've seen the opportunity for a flywheel of continuous improvement, right? But starting with efficiency, those time-intensive tasks, getting that time back to allow those tasks to be more efficient, gives the opportunity for innovation in the team. When team members aren't drowning in routine tasks, they have time to like take a step back, think more creatively with each other and with Claude to come up with better ways to do things, which leads to transformation of legacy processes. We can now like rethink what the process should be now that we have AI augmenting part of that process. And that allows us to really redefine and transform what was a legacy process into a more efficient process. And then that new process allows more opportunities for efficiency, and that flywheel continues.
The idea of I love the idea of the flywheel, because I think, and I've mentioned it a few times, I think everyone's a little like stuck in the day to day, and I don't have the time to even really play with it or test it or try it. But I really believe if you can find some low hanging fruit that maybe just frees up a little bit of time, like that is then going to, like you said, give you the freedom to be able to then transform something else. So like it will continue to give you more time so that you can start transforming in a larger way. So it doesn't all have to be like what you've presented today, Adam, is awesome and intentional to grow the team less quickly or with a lower growth rate than the company is growing at, thankfully, because that's a huge jump. But I think you've done a great job establishing a lot of those things within this flywheel so that you can grow efficiently and you can continue to transform, which is like a huge piece of the puzzle. So I think when I think of people who are stuck in this, like, oh, I just got to find the time, like find the time, make the time, because you'll get the time back. It's sort of like spend the time now and be able to use that to your advantage later.
Totally. Yeah, that mindset shift is so important of starting with Claude. Like the problem of I need to find the time. You can use the calendar MCP integration, say like Claude, look at my calendar, identify like maybe meetings I didn't need to join where I could get time back, and then like what should I be doing in that time? Like Claude can be that consultant for you to help you find the time and to walk you through how to get started.
I love that. No excuses allowed. Awesome. Okay, so I know you have like a vision for the future, and I know we've got some questions coming in, so I want to make sure we have time for that, but would love to hear kind of like your take, where you're thinking you can take it, and your vision for this, because I think it's also really both important and insightful.
Sure. Yeah, I'll walk through this quickly so we have time for questions. But when thinking about a vision for AI in FinOps, I kind of bucketed it into three things. The first being adoption, right? Like a lot of finance leaders here, I'm sure, have struggled with the challenge of getting an employee base to adopt a new policy, process, or system, right? Like employees are already busy, and finance-driven policies or processes can feel like a burden. But I think the future will be having these AI assistants directly in your system that's connected to your knowledge base, similar to like the finance tickets agent, where employees can go to the system, ask questions, the agent can respond to give context on policy and process, and even guide the employee to the right screen that they're trying to get to, and even perform work on their behalf by getting context, which gets to this next area of automation. Like using procure to pay as an example, there's a ton of manual touch points across that end-to-end process. But we think the future will be touchless with AI augmenting that. For example, from intake with like Claude scrubbing an order form and parsing out all the information to actually fill out the intake for the user, to reviews, having agents inside of systems doing proactive reviews on behalf of the reviewer, and giving an executive summary of like where to focus on or why this looks okay to approve, to invoice coding, finally taking off with what OCR tried to do and getting fully automated coding and analysis so that it's correct accounting guidance, like leveraging your chart of accounts guidance, the accounting policies to make sure everything is coded correctly. And then with assurance, like sticking with the P2P example, even with strong controls and processes in place, it's really hard to make sure the end reviewer, the end business user, is doing a meaningful review before you're paying an invoice. But if you have an AI agent that's proactively tying the invoice back to the PO, reviewing the contract to make sure they can even invoice for that, helping assess whether goods or services were delivered, making sure the accounting was correct, and then giving that exec summary to the reviewer of here's what I did, here's the confidence level, here's where to probe further before approving, and what approving actually means, you get that increased assurance.
love it. And the assurance piece is huge. As I know, we're all a little bit cautiously optimistic, but still cautious, as we should be. So I love that. Now, I know we've got just over 10 minutes left, a number of questions, so it might feel like a bit like a rapid round of fire here, but I'd like to get through as many as we can, but also not skipping over anything. So I'm just going to go in order that they came in. So the first one is this AI tool embedded in the ERP system, as I can see that it's generating numbers based on the questions?
It's not embedded. So everything I demoed are things you can do with a Claude Pro or Claude Enterprise account using projects and all the connectors that come with that, like MCP connections. For numbers, it's either uploading raw data into that Claude project, like for the P2P metrics, or for what I mentioned on the like what we're trying to do with OpEx automation. We have an MCP connector to BigQuery, which is our data lake, and we have our GL and subledger systems connected to BigQuery. And we're using Claude to go query that information, review it, and then analyze it for us.
Perfect. All right. FinOps environment is dynamic. For example, new products get added, governance or compliance changes, new accounting rules, reorgs, all of the above. How do you ensure that Claude keeps up with the changes, maintaining prompts, rules are updated, all of those things?
On the prompts, where we are identifying prompts that others can use, for example, like the Chrome extension prompts, we've created a prompt library, a Google Doc that just walks through like what are the use cases we're trying to solve, what is the prompt, and what I'm trying to encourage the team to do is go use that prompt for the use case. But at the end of every session with Claude, because usually there's a feedback loop and Claude doesn't get it exactly right away, and you need to give additional context. So at the end of every chat, ask Claude, like, what is a one-shot prompt that would have gotten you to this endpoint further? And then go update that prompt library so everyone else can start there and continue iterating on it over time until we get really comfortable that it's doing it consistently and accurately. And then what was the first part of that question again?
It was just, maintaining the prompts and like, as rules are updated
Oh, yeah.
or any kind of like changes, whether it's reorgs or other sort of, I'll say, outstanding changes to like a process or something like that.
Yeah, I think using transcripts is really helpful. So one thing I didn't demo, but I have a Claude dashboard for our OKR and project updates where
Hmm.
this was fun. So I started the year, like I created a state of FinOps doc at the beginning of the year, just manually like going through and highlighting all the great work the team did and setting priorities for 2025. And then in June, halfway through the year, I went through and like, what's all the great work we did halfway through the year, and let's realign on our priorities for the second half of the year. But I had a team meeting to talk through that, and I used the transcript to have Claude create and update that doc for me. And then based on the doc, I had Claude create a Google Sheet with our actual project tracker and update all of the projects for that. And then we had we do a monthly extended team meeting to check in on OKRs and projects. And I transcribe all of these. So when I give Claude the transcript in that OKR project within Claude, I have Claude just use the transcript to update the Google Sheet tracker and then to create a dashboard that has an interactive artifact where I can share this with others. So that's one way where we can do it, just by continuing to use transcripts, feed it into projects, ask Claude to iterate and update.
Yeah, and I think to your first part too, just for those that aren't this may be very obvious to some, but I think where I really started to see a difference in how I could use tools was around the prompts. So thinking of it as rather than having to go in and ask the same question or ask for the same output every time, kind of setting that, I don't want to say set it and forget it, but use that as the basis and the context, and then being able to use, to your point, Adam, like transcripts or slide decks or any kind of output that would inform any kind of updates to be able to like rerun that without having to build it from scratch every time.
Totally. And I think skills are really helpful for that too, because you can pre-package all of that context into a skill, let it know like where to look for updated context, and then just call on the skill to update things for you.
Totally. I can't wait to dive into that because I only learned about skills through you. So I'm very excited to play with that too. Okay, you got a shout out for awesome presentation before the question. Where do you deploy the dashboards so other teams can access them, or do you keep everything inside Claude? And that's question number one, so I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, for dashboards, I tend to use projects for all of these use cases, and then I can control who has access by sharing access to the project. And then once the dashboard is created, similar to any chat within a project or output in a project, you can share that particular dashboard or chat, and then everyone in that project would have access to it. So then it's just a URL link that I can share to the team, or they can go into the project to find the output. If it's something that's broader, where I want others outside of that group to have access to it, I'll download the artifact as an .html file and then upload it into Google Drive. So if you have access to that Drive link, then you can download the file, open it, and see the dashboard local on your hosted. And then as dashboards change, I can just use the edit what controlled document it is to upload the newest version, and then that link stays the same and people can still access the updated content.
Oh, great. Awesome. Then I actually don't think I need to get to the second point, but it was, do you ask DevOps team for help? But you don't need to, so that's a good thing. All right, another one. How are we doing on time? All right, we got a couple more minutes. Where do you think Claude will fall short? For example, areas within FinOps where you still see specialized solutions.
Yeah, I think like accounting needs to be 100% accurate 100% of the time, right? And so that's one thing where, like, even to get comfortable on the P2P metrics, we ran it in parallel for most of this year to get comfort that it was doing it right every time before now we're letting Claude go. But then we still have the human in the loop in terms of reviewing the output and using critical thinking to see, like, does that make sense based on what we're seeing? And if we were to catch something, like drill into the details and replicate it manually with Claude's help, and then and understand where Claude got it wrong, give it the feedback, update the skill so that we can make sure it's getting it right the next time. So I think anything with respect to numbers that you're going to report, you really need. Well, I think anything you need a human in the loop. So we're not letting Claude. Anytime we have an approval or a control, Claude can help us do some of the legwork, but we're not, even with like a Chrome extension, we don't want Claude to actually go approve an invoice, for example. But we're okay with Claude running in the background, doing a bunch of review and analysis to help speed up our time with reviewing all of those invoices.
Yep. And I think too, to add on to that, I think there are certainly instances where either teams don't have the ability, not necessarily saying be complacent with not knowing about how to use these tools, but Adam, your team obviously has a lot of support and or interest and or support around Claude because you work at Anthropic. So for those that don't or don't have the tech savvy teams or the extensive teams to be able to implement something like that, that's also where I think another, in addition to having these purpose-built tools that really can be helpful when you are deep in a finance process or it's touching the finance numbers. But I think that's another area where, like, if you don't have the extensive team like you guys do, or like I said, that they don't have the ability to do that, could also be another area of getting that help. But as always, like you said, human in the loop for sure. Okay, last question that I just got was, what is the basis of the integration between your GL and BigQuery that enabled that flux analysis that you mentioned? Are you inputting transaction level information, account level? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's both. So for the OpEx automation, what we do here is we just have a really big Google Sheet file where we use NetSuite currently as our ERP, creating saved searches in NetSuite so we can see expense details at the transaction level. And then we're uploading that into a Google Sheet. And then we're also looking at pending journals that haven't been approved and our expected accruals so that we can see an expected expense at any given time and do a flux analysis based on that.
So it's taking that same logic, those same safe searches in NetSuite, and integrating those into BigQuery so that we have that same data at the GL level and the transaction detail level to pull into Claude through the MCP integration.
Awesome. All right. With 3 minutes to spare, not too bad. Thank you so much for hanging in there with the rapid round here. Thank you so much to everybody for dialing in. Please feel free to connect with Adam and or myself. And like I said earlier, if you haven't joined OTTO-MATES, would love to have you as a place to continue to explore and ask questions and figure out what's going on here. So Adam, thank you so much. This is so interesting. I could talk to you all day long about this stuff, as you know. And thanks again all for joining.
Thank you, Em. This was fun.
Take care, everyone.